Steelers lost to the Buffalo Bills. So here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, we're going to talk about what are the next steps moving forward. What are the biggest things you take out of the playoff loss? What happens with Mike Tomlin? What happens with the quarterback room? All that and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting app and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listener today because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Pittsburgh, it is not a victory Tuesday, unfortunately, because the Pittsburgh Steelers lost 31-17 to the Bills. I gave my instant reaction, so you got some of my initial thoughts from there. But stepping away, looking back at some different parts of the game and kind of taking in what players and coaches said after the game, I think there's similar directions that you can go about this game. This is a game the Steelers needed to play to their strengths, and they didn't. They were a team that won the turnover differential all season long. And they lost the turnover differential in this game. They were plus 11 on the year, second best in the NFL. That was a big part that carried them to a lot of their best wins. And against a really good team in the Buffalo Bills, you needed to win it or at least neutralize it, and you lost it 2-0. And then from there, the Bills built a 21-point lead, and then you couldn't depend on the run game to grind things out, and that kind of prevented you from going anywhere. And that's the problem the Steelers faced in this game, and it's a problem that they've experienced in pretty much all their playoff games that they've lost in the past several years. And then this is a game where it's another playoff loss, and it started very similarly to the last few that they've had. You go back to the Chiefs game, whereas they did open up that game with a 7-0 lead, and the defense was playing out of its mind for the first, I'd say, 20 minutes of the game. And more like 25 minutes, something like that. But you get my point. They were up 7-0 because the defense was doing everything it could, even with all 3 and outs. And then eventually they fell apart, and the Chiefs broke the game wide open, as well as the Browns game, where the offense literally handed them 7 points to start the game, and everything built out. It just felt similar to that when you see the Bills go up 21-0 before the Steelers are able to get anything going. And it looked like it was going to be 24-0 until that blocked kick let the Steelers at least get good field position, and then they were able to get some points from that. So I think that there's certainly things to look at there. I'm not so sure that the game plan, the biggest problem I had with the game plan in this game was that I did feel like they tried to run the ball too much into the crowded boxes. I think that when there were several times the Bills early on loaded the box with 9 guys, and the Steelers just kept running into it thinking they could overpower them. And listen, like, once you kind of get momentum, there's times where that can work. But this is a Steelers team that had been running the ball with a balanced attack to help with it. And when a team is overloading to stop it, you have to be able to take what's there. Mason Rudolph, I think, took too long in this game to kind of get into a flow. And again, if you watch my post-game reactions, I'm not putting this game just purely at the feet of Mason Rudolph. I thought he fought hard in this game. He gave a great effort, showed some real guts with some of the throws he made from the pocket, especially on third down in some situations. I thought he deserved credit for the fight that he gave throughout the game to keep the Steelers alive when they started to try to make their comeback. But at the same time, early on, he was locking on to one receiver. There were problems there. And then his interception in the red zone was just tough. But again, you can't beat a team like the Bills going 0-2 in the turnover battle, because when you do that, they scored touchdowns off of both turnovers. You flip those around, you make that a game immediately. And even if they just neutralize, even if they didn't win the turnover battle, if they just neutralize those turnovers, say you flip the Mason Rudolph interception from 7 points to Buffalo for 7 points for the Steelers, all of a sudden it's a 14-point swing and a 14-point game. And if George Pickens doesn't fumble the ball on a 9-yard reception where it set up 2nd and 1, who knows what happens with that? Because that also gave the Bills a short field to set up their second touchdown of the game. So all that being said, the Steelers, I feel like they had a game plan that could have worked. Certainly the early passes not coming up to help kind of get the flow of the game going didn't help. But all in all, they had a plan of attack and they used it throughout the game. But This was a team with the Buffalo Bills. Like I said, going into this was the team you did not want to draw of the three teams. You saw how the Dolphins played, earlier this weekend, and I think this team could have hung in there with the Chiefs. Because they don't have the weapons that the Bills have at the tight end position past Travis Kelce, or at the receiver position really anywhere. And that could have been something that the Steelers worked with. But you drew the Bills, you went in, you had a plan, and you failed to execute. And so that's going to leave big questions as far as how does this team move forward from here, because now this is the 7th straight year where they do not have a playoff win. And that is a real problem that the Steelers continue to look at here. And again, I think there's several guys that get credit for the fight that they put up in this game. Again, Mason Rudolph, I thought he hung in there and gave you a chance. Jaylen Warren was running hard. I thought Najee Harris tried to run hard. He had nowhere. Every time he got the ball, the Bills were all over it. I thought George Pickens, his fumble was tough, but you could see he was fighting back. I thought Deontay Johnson had some impressive catches and runs to kind of keep the Steelers in it. Calvin Austin getting a touchdown in this game. I thought there were some guys that made some big plays here and there. Alex Highsmith, Marcus Golden, each getting a sack. But ultimately, you need a full team effort that comes with clean football, with avoiding the big mistakes and creating mistakes on the other end. And they just didn't get it. And one thing that was supposed to happen, if you were going to win this game, you had to put Josh Allen in a position to be desperate. There was never a point in that game where he felt desperate enough to take the unnecessary risk, where he's like, hey, I'm going to just trust my arm and fling this one into double coverage. The one time it did happen, Eric Rowe dropped it, but it worked out for the Steelers because they blocked the field goal right after that, and that set up their first score. But you can't win a game when you're losing on the script to win it. And I think that leads to the ultimate discussion when we're talking about the top priorities of the offseason. And we're going to have plenty of time to go over this. Don't worry, we're going to do grades and stuff and all that stuff down the line. But this is just for this after this game. I think this is an example of the Steelers clearly can win on the path where they win the turnover battle, the defense plays well, and we've even seen them start to be able to run the ball. But they need a wider path. They need more ways to beat teams right now. And the fact of the matter is they haven't had them for quite some time. And again, it's a testament. Like I think that people that want to fire Terrell Austin as a defensive coordinator might be a little hasty. That was a top 10 defense this year scoring wise. Granted, you wanted to perform better in this game. I think the defense, if you can make some additions at key positions, I think you need a new cornerback next to Joey Porter Jr. I think you need healthy linebackers that you've invested in to come into the team, and that can make a difference in this game. I think your defensive front needs to be a little bit stronger up the middle. But if you can make the right changes there, I think this defense and maybe a better safety to pair with Minka Fitzpatrick, but you make those changes, the Steelers defense can still be a really tough unit. But on offense, you need more ways to beat people. You need a passing game that's going to scare people. You need a running game that can work with that and build chemistry. And it looked like they were maybe getting something there with Mason Rudolph in the final 3 games. And there were even times in this game where it started to feel like they were starting to click in the second half, but it was too little too late when you dug yourself a hole. And that's the problem the Steelers have been in, is that they dig themselves holes in these, especially in these playoff games. And again, not for coming out and not having a plan, but for coming out and just making huge mistakes at the wrong time, where you're just not holding the ball onto the ball at the wrong moment, forcing the ball into a position you didn't need to force it into, like Mason Rudolph did on that interception. Those are the key points that you look at in this game, and you wonder, dang, if you could do those things differently, how much different of a chance does it give you in this game? But again, you need to find different ways to win if you're going to build moving forward. And that's where I want to focus on on some of the discussions as we go throughout this offseason. But the big question that our friend Brooke Pryor from ESPN asked Mike Tomlin and didn't get a response for was, what is going to happen with Mike Tomlin? He still has a year left on his deal. Will there be an extension? You'll get my thoughts on not just what might happen there, because there's multiple parties involved with the Steelers and Tomlin making a decision in this instance, but also what might need to happen if either situation does happen for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about all that here, as well as the quarterback situation and other coaching hires the Steelers need to make, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs that reach your network and beyond, the world's largest professional network, over 810 million people. Then add your job with the purple hashtag hiring frame to LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get to the Mike Tomlin question here today. Now, there's a few things that I want to point at that happened in some of the press conferences. I, of course, was not in Buffalo. I was still here in Pittsburgh doing this. I got to cover Pitt basketball tomorrow night. I wasn't trying to deal with all that snow. But a few things to point out here. One, Mike Tomlin in his post-game commentary, the last question that's asked him is asked by ESPN's Brooke Pryor, and she's asked about his one-year contract. He doesn't even entertain the question. He walks off. You could tell Mike Tomlin was kind of like in that situation thinking like, I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the team, what just happened in this game. I thought it was a very fair question from Brooke. And if Mike Tomlin doesn't want to answer it, I think he could have given Brooke at least I'm not talking about that right now instead of walking off. But I get, frustrations and stuff after a loss like that, and saying, hey, I'm not going to address that there. So I think that's neither here nor there, but I don't think that has any indication on what Mike Tomlin's decision is going to be here. And let's be real about this situation, in the Mike Tomlin situation. I don't think the Steelers are going to let go of Mike Tomlin. I don't think they're going to fire him. I don't think they're going to sit there. I think the Steelers are going to offer him an extension, but I think Mike Tomlin is, if there's an actual decision to be made on his end, because, supposedly he's supposed to go talk to his family and see how things are going to play out. I do wonder what are the pros and cons in his head of staying or leaving, or taking a year off or whatever Mike Tomlin's saying there, because if it would make sense for Mike Tomlin to want to come back, because this is the situation that he's coached. He's wanted to push through. He's wanted to keep developing. He continues talking about how he wants to further develop guys. I mean, the way he talks about how, he's developing George Pickens for the long haul and all the other things, and guys like Broderick Jones. And, he's a guy who I think he lives for this stuff. You can talk to anyone that's around him throughout the season, even throughout the offseason, with how dedicated he is and how, just invested he is into every step of the football process. He doesn't look like a guy that's ready to just hang it up and just be like, I'm tired of this football thing. So I have a hard time seeing that he wants to just give it up. Unless there's another factor there, unless there's a family factor there, they want to leave Pittsburgh, they want to move somewhere else, whatever. But I have a hard time seeing that as the big reason. Just what was it, a year or two ago when he was asked about leaving for USC or whatever, and Mike Tomlin made the big gesture of, saying, like I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, never say never, but never. And I actually do think that's going to be the case here. But if Mike Tomlin if he goes, that's a whole other discussion about who they need to get. And that's a discussion that literally you haven't had to have in Pittsburgh since I was in high school. So I don't think that's something that if we get to that bridge, we'll cross it and we'll deal with it then. But the big discussions right now are, what are the top priorities for Mike Tomlin moving forward, assuming that he comes around again. I think the Rooneys are giving him an extension. If you go back, and I draw this parallel a lot, so excuse me if you've heard it a million times on the show, but you go back to when they extended Cowher at the end of the 90s. The Cowher finished the 2000 season with his third year of not making the playoffs. They went 7-9 and 6-10, then finished 9-7 with a strong finish. I think they were 3-1 at the end of that year. And when the Rooneys extended Cowher in that situation, people wonder, like, wait, that guy just missed three playoff. He had missed the playoff for 3 years in a row. what are, why is that happening? And he was like, because that locker room still believes in him. And when you listen to guys in the locker room, they still believe in him. Cam Hayward saying like, hey, I'm not playing for anyone else other than Mike Tomlin. Broderick Jones saying, I've never been coached by anyone like Mike Tomlin. So there's some interesting things there, but there are also some interesting things on the other side of things. Like when Najee Harris spoke to reporters, and I don't think this was a shot at Tomlin. I think this was a directive that he wants to see change moving forward. But I do think it speaks to the culture of Mike Tomlin right now, and how and what he does with the Steelers. And Najee Harris, I don't have the exact quote right in front of me right now, but basically saying that he does feel like there need to be in-house rules that address things differently and make sure that guys are more committed at different points coming back next year. And he even specifically said that's not about a coach. That's not about changing any coaches. He said specifically he's talking about just some in-house rules. And I wonder if it means among the players. But one thing that I think that when people talk about Mike Tomlin and his approach to coaching, Mike Tomlin is the guy who's going to challenge you, but he's not going to baby you. He's not going to coddle you. He's not going to just be like, going to be on you every day of every moment. He's going to be like, hey, I'm going to challenge you to meet you here. And if you don't meet this challenge as an adult, then we're going to move on with someone else, or we're going to do something else here. And I think that's the way he's coached. And that's great for, professionals and veterans who get it and they know what the challenge is and they meet it and there's never any question about it. But with some of the younger guys like George Pickens, I'd say like Broderick Jones, but I think Broderick Jones is actually one of the guys who gets it. But with younger guys that are filling in, maybe there's a challenge that maybe there's a different way to approach them specifically. Maybe Najee Harris is talking about, how they need to approach that and hold the standard across the board. I think that's a question for Mike Tomlin moving forward is, how does, what's his rapport with Najee Harris? Because to me, Najee Harris has said a lot of the right things. And you could see throughout the year when the Steelers were starting to pick things up, he was one of the vocal leaders leading that charge. Even when they were down, he was one of the guys trying to, lead the right conversations in the locker room and moving forward. And so if Najee Harris, wants a change in the direction of the team, I'm not saying he just gets it because he's Najee Harris. That's not the case there, but I think it would draw interesting conversations, between him and Mike Tomlin. What does Najee Harris want changed from Mike Tomlin's perspective? Is that a team thing? Are there a lot of guys who feel that way? Or is it not a Mike Tomlin perspective? Is it more of like hey, veterans, we have to uphold a standard that we need moving forward? Those are all interesting questions. But for Mike Tomlin, I think that, again, he's going to get an extension of how the Rooneys operate. I do wonder if the stuff that's being said by Jay Glazer and the reports that he may consider, sitting out a year or whatever, is just a negotiating tactic to get something more when he gets to the negotiating table with the Rooneys. I'm not so sure how far that goes, because the Rooneys are known to be, this is our offer and this is what we're doing. But I do wonder what if Mike Tomlin's trying to get more money or if he's trying to get more power with the Steelers organization and maybe getting to call some more of the shots. And maybe have, a more direct impact on coaching hires, because there is the question as far as, who specifically has he hired versus, maybe, Art Rooney making the call on some of those situations. So all that being said, I think that there's a lot of questions with how they're going to handle the offensive staff. Do they keep the same guys on as far as Faulkner and Sullivan? Do they keep a guy like Pat Meyer with the offensive line? There's lots of legitimate questions there. And with the offense struggling the way it did, I think Faulkner is a guy you want to bring back, but maybe not as the offensive coordinator again, as he was interim offensive coordinator. I think you want a guy who's going to come in and bring in his own system. And we talked about earlier in the season with guys like Eric Bieniemy. Maybe he's available with the Commanders, coaching situation. Maybe Kellen Moore's available with the Chargers coaching situation. Lots of different options there, and there's new ones popping up all the time. Brian Schottenheimer from the Cowboys might be available if the Cowboys get rid of Mike McCarthy. So there's a lot of different people that you could look at there that could be potential, offensive guys who come in and work under Tomlin if he's to get the extension and if he wants to get the extension, and that changed the tone for how the Steelers move forward. But I think the biggest priority here is this is an offense, as I said before, that needs to be able to win in different ways. You need to be able to, yes, run the ball, but you need an organized passing attack that gives a guy a chance. And we'll get to the quarterback room in a moment, but I think you're going into next season, even if the Steelers, make a big trade to get a player from another team, or, trade up in the draft to get one of those top draft high drafted quarterbacks in this year's class. You're still looking at a position that they'll be in where they'll need to make an offense kind of around a game manager type quarterback, or make it so that it's simpler decisions, for the quarterback, and you're trusting your playmakers. Even if you bring in that guy that you think could be the guy, unless it's like, they're getting, a superstar quarterback from another team that we can't see right now because of whatever reasons. But even if it's like Justin Fields, and we'll get into that question in a little bit. You need to construct an offense that I think is not weighing heavily on that quarterback, and is going to, be able to run the ball efficiently with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, be able to get, open looks for Johnson and Pickens and Freiermuth in a balanced attack. That's the way the Steelers need to be. That's what the best offenses are. And the Steelers, I find it very hard for them to find a quarterback that they're going to be able to lean on the way the Bills lean on Josh Allen. So there's a lot of things that need to happen there. But I think that part of it's going to be seeing if Tomlin does want to stay on. I think he does. Again, I don't see the indications that he wants to quit. And once that happens, you go find your OC and whatever other pieces that OC wants to bring with him to the coaching position to reshape the offense and get to work on that, because that's you have to have something better that year. In fact, we said going into the season, the Steelers offense needed to be ranked 16th. They weren't even close, and that led to Matt Canada being fired midseason. And you saw an uptick here and there, but you need consistency onward and upwardness, and you didn't see that from the Steelers this year on offense. That's going to be a huge story for the offseason and a big focus over the next week or so. We'll talk more about the Steelers offense in a second here, because I want to talk about the quarterback situation. That's a big deal that the Steelers have to answer. Mason Rudolph, a free agent. Kenny Pickett under contract. Mitch Trubisky under contract. Quarterbacks in the draft class. Quarterbacks that could be on the trade market. All that will be in play. We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. We're at the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, where you too can win big with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's right. You get $150 just by betting on one time on one team. And if you hit, you're getting $150 back in bonus bets. And those bonus bets can go to anything that FanDuel does. When we're talking about spreads, player props, over-unders, parlays, so many different ways to win when you sign up for FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And that's the thing about FanDuel that makes it awesome right now, is that you have so many different options to win and so many different offers to take advantage of right now. But you can take advantage of this offer right now by going to FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and you'll be ready to take advantage of the rest of the NFL playoffs by going to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Download the app to your phone today. It's a great opportunity to make some money on the rest of the NFL season, as well as all other major sports. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We're also brought to you by Jace Medical. The Jace case from Jace Medical brings you 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. And all it takes to get a Jace case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of your board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Don't be caught unprepared, whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage. Jace Medical's got you covered. Thanks to the partners at Jace Medical, a life-saving antibiotics and a list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply, even ED generics for Cialis and Viagra. Jace handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Jace Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get prescription life-saving medications delivered right to your door. The Jace case gives you peace of mind that you are not just hoping that you have the access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication on hand. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. If you or someone you love would get peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if that's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase at Jace Medical. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's talk about the quarterback situation for a minute. Also, before we get to that, actually, I'll say this. Cam Hayward gave a speech, in his press conference speech, and he's not sure what's going to happen moving forward for him right now, because he says his heart wants to keep playing, but his body, it was a challenge this year, and that's a real question for a guy who's been a Steelers captain and a Steelers leader for so long now. And one of the vanguards of the Steelers core leadership. So that'll be a big question. But an even bigger question, I think, is what to do at the quarterback position, because you have to have better quarterback play next year. It just has to happen. If you're going to hope to be any better moving forward, because you can't go into next season just hoping that, just coming in and getting the same kind of quarterback play. Otherwise, you're going to be doomed to a similar result. And that's the thing that's held the Steelers back in a lot of these games, especially a lot of these big games in the playoffs. So the question then becomes, what do you do at quarterback? As it stands, you got two under contract next year. That's Kenny Pickett, who's still on his rookie deal, entering his third year. Mitch Trubisky also getting, sticking around with the Steelers as the veteran who they signed an extension for in the middle of last season. That looking kind of rough right now. He is on with the Steelers for 2 more seasons. So Mitch Trubisky obviously getting benched for Mason Rudolph. That changes things up. Mason Rudolph was signed a 1-year deal with the Steelers to come back. He'll be back. He'll be hitting free agency if he wants to. The question will be, what's the market for Mason Rudolph? And I don't think that this is an easy question, because I think Mason Rudolph, obviously he went to the free agency market. No one wanted him. He came back to the Steelers, but he didn't have the end of the season run that he did here with 3 straight wins with the Steelers putting up decent points, him having 3 straight games with 112 plus passer rating. And then also the gutsy performance he showed in the playoffs. I can very much see a team this year saying, hey, need a backup quarterback. We can pay you $5 million. And Mason saying, I'll take that. And the question will be, will he be interested in whatever the Steelers are willing to offer, if they're willing to offer something? Because I look at the Steelers right now, and it would just make a ton of sense to get rid of Mitch Trubisky, sign Mason Rudolph, and then maybe draft a quarterback, and then go into next season with 3 different options, have a legit camp battle to see who should be the starter at the beginning of the season. If you cut Mitch Trubisky, by the way, you get $2.9 million back in your cap savings. $4.6 million will be going to your dead money, so that's not great. But the year after that, you'd also save $6 million more. I think that that situation with Mitch Trubisky has run its course. But looking at Mason Rudolph, I get people that are saying like, hey, he should come back and just be QB1 when you see the success at the end of the season. But let's not delude ourselves. Like, this was also you also are still looking at giving Kenny Pickett a legitimate shot with an offensive coordinator, an offensive system that will work in his favor. And I think that Mason Rudolph deserves just as much of a chance, if he's brought back. And I think the best thing the Steelers could do to help themselves, if they're really wanting to build at the quarterback position, is either bring in another legitimate, contender who could become a starter, or get a rookie who you draft in like the first 3 rounds or so, and see if they can develop behind either of these guys. Those are all things there. Justin Fields is an option that a lot of people are going to bring up all throughout this offseason, because the Bears obviously have the first overall pick. They can obviously get like Caleb Williams or whoever they want in the draft, and then Justin Fields won't be relevant anymore. You can send him, and the Steelers are like, oh, you can just trade for him. Here's the problem with that. Justin Fields is not in the position the Steelers aren't in the position where I think they could just take on Justin Fields and just be fine with that. Because Justin Fields, if you remember, he came in the 2021 season. His last season on his rookie deal is next year. So he won't be too bad next year if the Steelers were to trade for him. He'd be a $6 million cap hit. But logistically, you then need to sign him to a long-term deal like right away. And that would be a lot to ask for, I think, because this is still a team that has a lot of answers that it needs to make across the board. Now, if you believe Justin Fields is the guy and you could be the one that fixes him, maybe. But in Chicago, there's been flashes of really good talent that he's put things together and been exciting to watch, but never any level line of consistency. And so not only would you need to be getting, if you're thinking Justin Fields is the answer, not only would you need to hit with him, but you'd also need to hit with your new offensive coordinator hire to make sure that that he's coming into a system that benefits him. And that's why I'm not so certain that that's actually going to happen. I do think Omar Khan does something in the front office. I do think that they don't just stay put with what they have and that's it. I do think they get a guy. I mean, we'll go over all the QB draft prospects when we get to the draft part of the season. I usually wait until like the end of the full football season, start doing mock draft Mondays again. So that gives me time to put together actual draft research and I'm not just throwing names at you guys. But in all seriousness, I do think that the way the Steelers are going to have to handle this is that, you're not getting rid of Kenny Pickett. You're going to give him a shot to earn the starting job again. If Mason Rudolph doesn't get get a big contract offer somewhere else to be a backup quarterback, you bring him back in and you see what you're going to do with both of them. But I would not close the door to getting either another veteran to come in who could be around either of those two's playing caliber, or getting a rookie that you think you can develop in another year or two, just to give yourself another option. Because there's also the chance that with a new offensive coordinator, maybe Kenny Pickett does work out, and I'm not saying turns into a star, but he does similar things that you saw Mason Rudolph do at the end of this season. That would be, huge for the Steelers. But if he doesn't work out, you could have Mason Rudolph, and if that doesn't work out, you could have a rookie quarterback who you're trying to make your next inline heir. Because again, as I always say, all it takes is one time to hit on the quarterback position, and once you do, you could be set for the next decade or decade and a half. So lots of different paths there, but the Steelers have to list those priorities. The top one is going to be seeing what happens with Mike Tomlin. Does he want to stay on? We'll see if the Steelers, I believe that the Steelers have an open locker room today, Tuesday, to go attend. I'm going to try to get in there, see if my schedule permits, because I got a lot of other things to juggle this week. But I'm going to try to get in there and see what things are said there. And then I presume we're going to have a Tomlin press conference sometime this week soon, where we hear more from him. And I'm sure that you'll probably get asked that question again, and maybe he gives a response, maybe he doesn't. But bottom line, I think it's going to yield some interesting results to see what happens there and how quickly the Steelers need to move, because every day there's new coaches being interviewed and talked to. And if Mike Tomlin's not going to be with the Steelers, that needs to be figured out ASAP so that they can get on the coaching conversations with all these guys. Jim Harbaugh's being interviewed by the Chargers. Bill Belichick's being interviewed by the Falcons. The Steelers would want to be in on those hires if Mike Tomlin's not back. But if he is, like I think he is back, then you still want to be on the phone, getting a chance to hire offensive coordinators and fill in positions that you feel are changed. So there could be some changes coming up really soon. The Steelers do make moves on so that they can get things forward. And once those changes are set, then okay, this is the plan. These are the coaches. Let's see what you can do at quarterback, and then start making other moves for the future decisions. We'll get into all of that as the week rolls on here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks for tuning in here on the Locked On Steelers podcast on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube. We'll see you again here on the Locked On Steelers podcast Wednesday after we've heard from the Steelers after their season has ended. We'll see you here.